welcome to Breakfast with the Heathen. I am your favorite heathen, Mike Smithgall, and welcome. This is my Sunday morning show. It's a little bit of a cold day here in Chicago, maybe the high 30s, I guess. It's supposed to get into mid 40s, but I am also getting on a plane, and not too long, a few hours from now, and heading to Thailand, where at least today the high is about 88. So I'm in this weird position. I'm going to also go to Japan, which is also cold at this time of year. So I'm leaving Chicago wearing a coat. I'm going to get to Thailand in Bangkok, and I'll be wearing shorts and a t-shirt, but I have to take the coat because when I go to Japan, I will need the coat. Not a most efficient way of traveling, but it is what we are doing. So this one is going to be a little bit short today because, again, I am jumping on a plane here in a few hours, and I've got a 27-hour travel day ahead of me. I have to go from here, Chicago, straight to Tokyo. From Tokyo, I have a 6 or 7 hour layover, then down to Bangkok, which is another 7 or 8 hours. So it's all told about 27 hours, I think, give or take. And then I don't know what I'm doing. So I'm leaving today is the 23rd of Chicago. I will be back in Chicago on the 20th, give or take, of December. So I'm going to be gone for a month. But between landing in Bangkok and my round trip, I don't really have a round trip. My leaving ticket is coming out of Tokyo a month from now. I have no idea what I'm doing in the middle of that. So I'm just going to take a leap of faith. There's a phrase I heard a long time ago now, that sometimes you just got to jump off the cliff and build wings on the way down. And I kind of subscribe to that. My wife says I'm very proud of that, the fact that I have no idea what I'm doing. And I guess she's kind of right. I kind of pride myself on that ability to just roll, just go with it. So we're going to roll with today's show and roll right into some of the questions. Again, if you've never been here before, thank you for joining. This is my Sunday morning show where I just take a handful of questions. I've either had someone ask me, I've run across them on the internet or wherever the case may be, and sort of give my 2 cents on it and just my perspective. Not a fiery rhetoric show. It's just a casual Sunday morning show. So grab yourself some coffee and sit back and let's go. So let's see, what can we start the show off with today? So I'm going to start this one up. This is Espresso Asana is their username. It says, why are we not taxing the church? That is a really good question. And I think a lot of atheists default to that position of why aren't we taxing the church? And I honestly don't have a great answer for that. I've tried to think through that, and I can see just charity. Let's not call it a church. Let's call it any charity at all. Why do we not tax charities? And I think there's some legal perspective there of where people are giving their money. So if I'm giving you money, say you're a person on the street and you ask, for $10 and I give you $10. Well, should my gift to you be taxed? And no, we would say no. It's a gift, right? People are gifting their money to the church. So on one hand, I am sort of in favor of not taxing, just because, again, it's a gift, it's a charity, I understand it. But I think most of us tend to look at a church with $100,000 light and sound system, or the minister has a very expensive car, far more expensive sometimes than anybody in the actual the church, the parishioners could afford. And you got to think, boy, that just seems to go against the spirit of giving money, right? I don't know. I come down on the side of we should tax churches, but I could be convinced to go back to the other side. But yeah, I grew up in a town in Jacksonville, Florida, and the First Baptist Church downtown owned a lot of big buildings. They had a fairly large stadium type of or arena type of church, and they were very powerful at the time. I don't know if they are now, but they were at the time. They sort of ran the downtown, and my understanding was because of the buildings they owned, they generated a lot of income from those buildings. There does become a point where you're not just a small town preacher. You're running an organization, an operation that requires very little oversight, and there's no taxes. You sell no products. It's very hard to look at that. One time years ago, when I was a financial advisor, I was going with another financial advisor, a senior person there at the office, and he sort of showed me the ropes. And he said, we're going to go down to this area called Springfield in Jacksonville, Florida. And one of my clients is down there. We're going to talk to him about his retirement planning, yada, 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 right? And I remember thinking instantly, I'm about 26 at the time, so this is right around 96. I remember thinking, what? We're going to go to Springfield, which is not at the time, and really not now, known for having a lot of money. I thought, well, that's interesting. We have this financial advisor. He's going to go to Springfield. He's going to talk to this guy that's a preacher. I should have said that, about his financial planning. And I remember being blown away. Now, again, I'm 26. This is in 96. And we talked to this old man. He's a preacher at this relatively small church. And he had like $500,000 in his church. I don't know if it was a 401k. I guess it wouldn't have been because it was charity. But nonetheless, his church retirement fund. And I thought, well, how the heck did he get $500,000 in the church fund, church retirement fund? Not money he's put aside on his own, but money that the church has given him, and it's, of course, grown. But yeah, now since then, through being in the financial industry in various capacities, there is a lot of free money that flows towards the ministers and the pastors. In the mortgage world, which I also spent a lot of time in, it is very common to give a great deal of money to a pastor as housing expense. And I'm talking thousands of dollars sometimes. And there's probably some IRS rules about it, but I have seen $5,000, $6,000, $7,000 a month in housing expenses in expensive towns, but nonetheless. Everybody else, we have to pay for our mortgage money because it comes to us taxed. This was given to them as an expense, so it's untaxed. There's a point where that just feels wrong, right? It just feels corrupt. I just can't quite get on board with that. Again, I could probably be persuaded to go back and forth, and maybe it's just circumstantial. Maybe there's a certain point where, if a church brings in X dollars and it's not taxed, if it brings over X, then it's a graduated tax. I don't know, but yeah, it's very frustrating when you see a very large organization that's bigger than most normal businesses that are taxed, and here they are, because they're selling Jesus, they're not taxed. Yeah, I don't like that either. But Espresso Asana, good question. Now, here's another question that I'm going to ask you for help on this one, because I honestly don't know. And I said, do you believe that Jesus actually existed? And this is one of those things where I try not to have a great opinion. I mean, I'm about to give one, but I'm telling you, I'm giving you opinion on the bits and pieces that I have been able to pick here and there. I have no scholarly knowledge on it. And one of the problems with this question, it's the reason I left this question in, even though I don't have a good answer for it, is it is almost impossible to find good information on this question. That question, do you believe that Jesus existed? Try to look that up on the internet. The passion for a Jesus and the passion for the image of Jesus that we have now, which is this mighty figure that was revered throughout the land, and everybody was aware of him and his following and this, that, and the other. I don't believe that happened at all. From everything I've been able to read, that just did not happen, because there are no contemporary, meaning contemporary at the time, no contemporary, what's the word I'm looking for? Information. I'm looking for a better word there, but writings and reports of a Jesus that had that level of, as the kids would say, riz. Could there have been a man that basically this Jesus role, and that was a preacher of some sort, and he had, a small following? Sure. That'd be like any random preacher in the middle of Nebraska. Is he going to live throughout time? Probably not. It doesn't mean he didn't exist. He didn't make a big mark at the time. I think Jesus is more likely to have been that if he existed at all. I don't have the scholarly background to know if he did or not. But again, try to look that up on the internet. It's impossible to get good information. Everybody will tell you that, yes, of course he existed, and then of course he did this, and of course he walked on water, and of course and like, okay, well now you're just repeating the Bible. That's not the same. That's not the same at all. It's a great story, and if you want to believe it, then knock yourself out. But that doesn't make it a true story. That doesn't make the person true. And this was 2,000 years ago, right? So was there a real person? I'm going to give him the benefit of the doubt. Why not? Why not? I don't think he was completely made up, but I am under no illusions that this person, if they existed, had any of these magical powers that we associate with Jesus nowadays. So, but I'm curious if you have an opinion on that, and if you have an objective opinion. And again, I'm probably asking a question that's almost impossible to get a fair answer from. But if you're a believer, then you clearly believe Jesus existed. Okay, I get it. But when you look at the evidence, and real evidence that you would accept in any other situation, does that really look provable to you? Or are you going with 100% faith? Because the Bible is mostly the only thing. I think there's a couple other references that came about decades after his death. My understanding, and I could be incorrect, but my understanding is there are no contemporary records or references to him in any political, in terms of government markings. No other contemporary writers referenced him at the time of his life or death. It was only many decades later that he began to evolve into this figure. And then, of course, it was even hundreds of years that the story evolved even more. So was there a germ of an idea there? I don't know. Maybe. Was there a real person with all these magical powers? Absolutely not. I don't believe that for a second. All righty. Let's go to another one. This one is from Leading Occasion 428. Okay. Those names sometimes trip me out. Leading Occasion 428. This person says, this may be a weird freedom after leaving Christianity, but I'm glad I can sing and dance to secular music now. They go on to say, when I was a Christian, well, a casual Christian, I used to do line dances like the cha-cha slide or the Cupid shuffle. When I was trying to get closer to God and be more serious about my faith, I thought that God was convicting me of dancing only to secular music and never to Christian music, especially during worship music, because I was afraid I might catch the Holy Spirit. So I thought maybe I should just quit dancing altogether. That's interesting to me. That thing has always been very odd to me. I grew up in the 80s in terms of sort of as I was a teenager. I was a teenager in the 80s, and that was during the PMRC, the people that put the labels on records, and there was a lot of talk. I remember, and this is during the 80s sort of heavy metal era. I mean, and I was a heavy metal kid. I loved heavy metal, and all the hair bands that sort of evolved from that as well. But that the idea of churches coming down on Judas Priest, and that was when you were supposed to be able to spin the records backwards, and it would play devil, sort of comments, which was always the dumbest thing to me. Like, who's playing a record backwards anyways? It was so stupid. It was one of those things when you spun the record backwards, if you told me it said, you got to fix your washing machine, I'd eventually hear it because you've just planted that into my head. But of course they would plant in, this person is the devil, or I am worshiping the devil. And come on, it was so silly and stupid. But the dancing, dancing to secular music. Oh my gosh, all secular music must be from the devil. That always seemed ridiculous to me. There's a lot of great secular songs that have nothing to do with anything evil or untoward in any way. And there's a lot of, I'm sure there's a lot of good Christian music. There's certainly a lot of good Christian music in the song in terms of just hymns and things of this nature. I love like the Amazing Grace. When my kids were babies, I would sing that song to them, really kind of hum it to them because it's a very soothing song, right? But why can't kids? Maybe the question is, why can't they dance? Why is that a problem? You see a baby, I'm sure we've all seen this on on TikTok or YouTube or something, or yourself, when you have your own babies, your own children, they're old enough to sort of stand. If you get some good rhythm music, the baby just starts to move. There's something about music that humans just respond to, which is why all cultures have music. And is that of the devil? that is wildly bizarre to me. But I mean, it's not an uncommon thing, right? That people aren't allowed to dance. And again, if they are, they're not allowed to listen to secular music. They have to listen to Christian music, which, again, as a kid who grew up in the 80s and a heavy metal fan, Christian rock was just had never quite worked for me. Again, there are some good bands. There was a band, Stryper, if you're old enough to remember that, which makes you, makes you very old, which means your back probably hurts at this point. If you remember the band Stryper, they were a metal band in the 80s, and I think they're still around in one variation or another. I don't know who's still in it, but they were supposedly a Christian rock band. Now, I understand later on they sort of got away from that term, but I think it was more like they think themselves, they were a rock band of people that happen to be Christian, which is probably not uncommon for a lot of rock bands, but they had a little bit more of a Christian perspective, and they kind of marketed that for a while. My understanding is they did sort of back off that idea, but okay. But again, what's wrong with secular music? The fact that it's not being sung in a church doesn't make it bad. You want to argue about some lyrics? Okay, fine. I will give you that. There are some lyrics and some music that's not particularly good if you're trying to be a good, proper Christian and you've got various rules you need to follow. Okay, I'm fine with that. But come on, plenty of secular music that's not Christian by nature, but that's still very good songs and good singers and just beautiful music. Why cut that out? So this person's saying that they have some freedom now to dance and to sing to secular music when they stop being a Christian. This is in an ex-Christian subreddit. I think that's really interesting and good for them. Good for them, because it opens up a world of music that they maybe didn't have before. This is kind of a funny question, and I, again, don't know the answer to this, but I agree with their question here. This question is, why are most Satanists goth or alt? And I have zero studies to back that up, but I'm going to go with, yeah, it does seem that way. When you picture a person who's claiming to be a Satanist, they all tend to look like they're in a costume of some sort. Why is that? I don't know. I find people who dress in costumes, and I'm using air quotes that you cannot see, but when I find groups that dress in costumes, I find that interesting, funny, fascinating. There's a whole different list of words I have for that. And I'll give you a good example of, I grew up in Florida, as I mentioned. So Jacksonville is about 90 miles from Daytona. So every year there'd be two major events in Daytona. One is spring break. So all these kids would come down from colleges all over the north, and they'd come down where it was warm to Daytona. But the other thing that I think always happened was either right before spring break or right after. I think it was before spring break would be bike week. And sometimes these 2 weeks would almost end up right on top of each other. I mean, literally be 1 week would be 100,000 bikers there, and the next week's 100,000 college kids. So very interesting bookends to that thing. But the bikers, to me, are just like these goth kids. There's a weird undercurrent that runs through the bikers and the goth and the punks from the old days and this, that, and the other. They raise their fists and they rage and like say, we're not going to conform to your rules, blah, blah, blah. And then they all wear the same clothes. I mean, go to Daytona in Bike Week and try to spot the person not wearing a Harley Davidson shirt and not wearing some denim, sleeveless vest, or not wearing or not driving the same type of bike. You don't go down there with a bunch of crotch rocket bikes. You go down there with a Harley that looks like every other 100,000 Harleys down there. It's a very much a costume. You put on your Harley independent, I'm not going to conform to society, and then you conform to a society. It might be a subset of society, but you conform to it nonetheless, right? It's kind of silly. So yeah, when I think of like Satanists and people that are sort of, proclaim that they are Satanists, they do tend to look like goth people. And they've put on this bizarre costume. Aaron Ra, I think he goes by Aaron Ra, is a famous atheist. He has a YouTube channel, has for years. You look at that guy, you're like, yeah, I totally picture you as a Satanist. I don't know if he's a Satanist or what he is, but he has a look. It's a very specific look. But it's also a similar look that a lot of people have. And again, the people that tend to say that they are very independent and they are very unique and they are just living their own lives and they're not following rules, and they look like a lot of other people. In fact, you put those exact same people in the room and they all look like the same group. They all were issued the same costume at the door, right? I always find that very interesting. It fascinates me as to why they do that. I will not figure it out. All right, let's go to another question here. So this is a little bit of a lengthy here. I'll just read to the title of this question. No name on this person, but from an ex-Christian subreddit. Let's say hypothetically, if God does exist and he knows everything that is ever going to happen to all the lives he made, then God created a bunch of people just for them to go to hell in the end. Yeah. Yeah, right? It's as if God knows everything that's going to happen, then he made people just to go to hell. Doesn't that sound messed up? Yeah, it is kind of messed up, isn't it? I've never understood that as well. It's something else that's always sort of bothered me with the general concept of a God that knows everything and sees all and knows exactly what's going to happen next, even if you give free will, which is something I again, maybe I ask you guys. You hear this all the time. God gave you free will. But then the same person will turn around and say God knows everything you're about to do. If he didn't, how would he change the streetlights to avoid the wreck, right? Because he knows exactly what everyone is going to do from every moment going forward, right? And there's even that he knew you in the womb kind of thing, where basically the idea is that God knows from your beginning to your end. He knows when you're going to die. He knows everything, right? But at the same time, he gave you free will. Well, I mean, maybe. I guess you could put the two together. You have the choice to do what you want, I guess, under free will. But he knows the choice you're going to make. But if he knows that's going to happen, and he knows you're ultimately going to end up in hell, what's the point? I mean, literally, what is the point? Which goes back to a question I've always had, which is, if God is a creator, why make man? I mean, if you look at just the 10 Commandments, which isn't the best sort of thing to use to give this overall philosophical answer here, but if you look at the 10 Commandments, the first 4 are all about worshiping a God. Well, if I'm a God, if I'm the God, let's say for Christianity, if I'm the God and I am in control of everything that ever is and ever was and ever will be, do I really need a bunch of just ants, essentially? I mean, things that are so far beneath me, worshiping me? Is it any different than me really opening or starting a little ant farm and hoping those ants look up to me? Who cares? They're ants. I mean, they have no value to me in the greater sense because I am so far above the level of an ant that whether they worship me or not is really just completely immaterial. But why would I make them knowing that their destiny is to go to hell? What's the point of that? I just don't understand the need for human beings. What does God get out of human beings other than praise? And if that's the case, that's a little, I don't know, not a little needy, isn't it? I mean, really? I mean, it's really strange. It'd be like me and my wife creating children just so they can praise us. I don't get it. And maybe someone will spin that around, say, no, God made man so he could love us. Maybe, but you're putting a little bit more human sort of perspective, because once you go down that road, you got all kinds of other problems that pop up, right? God's supposed to be not susceptible to sort of the human emotions, right? Because that implies sexuality and everything. I mean, you get to a lot of weird areas that most people don't want to go. So God created humans knowing that X% are going to go to hell and spend eternity in hell. He knows that. Not that he wishes they wouldn't. He knows full well they will. So why create them in the first place? What does he or the human get out of that? And if I didn't ask to be born, in the sense that, I didn't ask to be a human, I didn't ask to exist, I have no choice in that matter, why put me through the process of having to choose? And the 50-50 shot I've got is to burn in hell for all eternity. That's a 50-50 shot. I only got 2 places I go, right? And that's one of them. I have to spend 80 years, give or take, of my life making sure I don't end up there with a bunch of arbitrary and very vague rules written down by people 2,000 years ago that my friend Mike always says didn't know where the sun went at night. I have to follow those rules. Why? Yeah, I don't know. It's very strange to me. Something else that's always bothered me as I'm sort of saying this and thinking about it. People, they point to the what's the word they use? Intelligent design, right? Intelligent design. I don't know if I hear that as much as I used to, but for a long time I felt like I heard that constantly about intelligent design, meaning God or some sort of all-powerful being created the humans and the animals and the plants, blah blah blah, all basically right there in Genesis, right? But it was intelligent design. We are intelligently designed, and they will use different things like, the eyeball is so perfectly formed, this, that, and the other. Well, it is, but tell me that when I have to put my contacts in. Tell me how perfect it is. Tell me how perfect it is when my blood sugar is too high. Regardless of what I do, it's just my body stops producing insulin, Tell me that when I get cancer, or anything else, it starts to fail. Your bones start to get brittle. Your limbs and your tendons and stuff start to stiffen up through arthritis and things of this nature. That's intelligent design because, and here's where I'm going with this, if I was sitting down with a pencil and some paper to design something, why wouldn't I just make it indestructible? What's the point of having it fall apart? No human on earth would ever design a machine that falls apart, right? And if that machine, again, going back to the earlier part of this question, is for the machine to worship me, well, why would I have it break down at all? I would just litter the earth with 1 million machines that worship me from sun up to sundown, and they never die. They don't need to even reproduce. I just put 1 million on there. I can put another 1 million tomorrow if I felt like it. What's the point of the human frailty and the destructibility of the human body and all the other animals as well, but we're talking about humans? I don't really understand that. It doesn't seem to help the humans out very much. It causes us nothing but heartbreak and pain and everything else as our loved ones die and as we break down and we eventually die. I don't know. Just one of those weird things I think about every once in a while, but it is one of those logical questions to me. Like, really, what's the point of that? All right, so this is from Ralph Humphreys. Ralph is a frequent commenter, and so Ralph, if you're listening to this, I do appreciate you always jumping in and with your thoughts and your questions. So he says, hey guys, I was thinking about things and just got to be honest. I was a Christian for 24 years, and I never really got it. I've been deconstructing for 9 months, and I have no desire to go back. Said it's been a journey. I'm an atheist now for a while, and I'm thinking maybe I'm at the point of being upset with myself and the Bible and all the people who have left me because I don't believe. And I'm realizing they were never close friends or family. Any suggestions for that and any suggestions that might help? Yeah, it's been difficult in my own journey, but with no one to talk to about it. Any suggestions? So Ralph brings up a very good point, and it's not an uncommon, and it's unfortunately very sad. A lot of Christians, and again, we always talk about Christians on this show because that's just who I grew up around, so I have more perspective. But believers in general, there is a tendency to separate the believers from the non. So, and I've talked about this many times. We have a group here in Chicago that we get together and meet a handful of times a year. We had a party a month or so ago here at my house for people like from our group. These are atheists. And one of the reasons we have that is because when you grew up in a Christian group and you go to Sunday school and you go to this, that, and the other within the church, and it turns out your parents are there, your friends are there, it becomes a big part of your social network. And sometimes, depending on where you live, it might be a whole social network outside of, say, work or school. Everyone you interact with is from church. Super common. I have zero problem with that necessarily. I mean, I could say expand your horizons a bit, but okay. But if you're in that bubble and all of a sudden, say like Ralph here, and you decide to leave that group, well, those people that were so close to you will sometimes basically shun you, to use that word, because now you're very often looked at as sort of antichrist. Really, they don't want anything to do with you, lest some of your devil worshiping atheism, which is what they always say, would rub off on them or make them question faith or present them with uncomfortable questions. and you will sometimes find yourself out in the cold. So again, one of the reasons we started our group here in Chicago and started having these meetups and these group sort of social gatherings, and purely social, we don't do any agenda, we just get together and hang out, was just to give people that sort of a replacement, just a place to hang out around like-minded people where they don't have to worry about what they say, religiously speaking, right? But what Ralph's experiencing is, he was I don't know how old Ralph is, but let's just say he is 24 or 25, I guess, because he's saying he was a Christian for 24 years. Let's assume that's from baby. I don't know Ralph personally. But nonetheless, so he's in his mid-20s or so, and he finds all the people that were his friends and his family and everything else, when he came and became an atheist or came out as an atheist, they stopped associating with him or pulled away. And that can be very, very upsetting. In fact, I will guarantee you there are X amount of people out there that are atheists. They do not believe, but they cannot leave the church, because that giving those people up, those friends, and I'm using air quotes around the friends, or the family, that the consequences of giving that up are worse than, at least they believe, worse than not living their true life. I find that sad. I liken it to someone who has to be in the closet. You're a gay person in a community that would not handle that, and you have to live in the closet. It's got to be very frustrating. You want to tell somebody, you want to breathe easy, you don't want to expose yourself accidentally, and you don't want to face the grief of coming out. And unfortunately, there's a lot of people that have had to live through that, as again, within LGBTQ community, and it's really not much different with atheists. Because same thing, you could have family kick you out, you could have the church kick you out, you can have your friends stop talking to you. That's a lot to give up. And for Ralph, to answer his question about any advice on that, I would say find a group. And it's easier said than done sometimes, because if you're in a small town, a group of atheists is going to be impossible to find. So I always suggest find your local, your nearest big city, and look for a meetup group or a Facebook group or any kind of online group that you can start to talk to, or look for a wider online group. That's fine too. I suggested to Ralph, you're welcome to join any of these conversations and ask us questions. We are more than happy to answer you as best we can. We'll just give you that sort of shoulder to lean on and say, okay, here's what I'm going through. Here's what I'm thinking. And it's one of the reasons we do the Unholy Roundtable, is exactly for that question, Ralph, which is we've all been down that road. So if you're struggling with some aspect of it, ask us on one of those shows. We are all happy to answer your questions on that or give you our 2 cents on it. But if you're in an area, and I don't know where Ralph lives, but if you're in an area, say that you were close to Chicago, then join our group and come to one of our meetups and hang out with us, just so that you have somebody else you can say, I can relax a little bit. I don't have to pretend that I'm going to church tomorrow morning. I don't have to wear a cross around my neck. I don't have to, hold hands with somebody when I'm eating at McDonald's just because we have to pray before I eat my Big Mac. Find a group like ours and just jump in. Jump in with both feet. What do you have to lose? I mean, it can't be worse, right? Does that mean everybody in the group you're going to like? No. I mean, there's people in my group, I don't like them. I just don't get along with them. We share atheism, but that doesn't mean I have to be their best friend. But there are other people in my group that I consider absolutely my best friends, people I love being around, and I can't wait till the next time we see them. My wife and I hang out with them all through the years. And again, we've been doing this for 10 years. People that, quite frankly, one of the reasons my wife and I moved back to Chicago after living in California and Texas is we miss these people. We miss this group because we had so many friends and they were atheists. And the amount of atheism we talked to them about is almost zero. But we know that we get along, and that is the thing that brought us together. That's fine. It's no different than people that flock together because they are Christians, or people that flock together because they like opera, or people that flock together because of whatever the thing is. They like gardening. That's fine. These people just share a world perspective, and worldview is really not the right word, but a perspective on atheism, which is a lack of belief or a lack of proof. You've not shown me proof that I believe that a God exists. That's essentially what it is. and therefore we don't live by these various rules that religious people put on themselves. That's all fine and dandy if they want to do it, but we decide not to do it. So sometimes finding other people that follow that same perspective and say, okay, yes, I can relax. I don't have to go to Sunday school, and I'm allowed to dance. I can go to a dance club and I can do this, or, I can raise my kids this way or the other way. Just having some people that think similarly is nice. So my advice to Ralph and anybody else out there like that is find a group like ours in your area. And again, you might have to go to a big city to find that, but put some effort in finding it. One of the best things, because the internet could be the best or worst thing sometimes, but one of the best things about the internet is you can find people like you across the land, across the world, quite frankly. In fact, I was talking to a guy today that I've never met, will likely probably never meet. He lives in Dubai. He's in a food group that I'm in, and we've just sort of, struck up an online friendship. And every once in a while, he'll send me a picture. In fact, he sent me something today about camel meat. Am I ever going to eat camel meat? Probably not, but it fascinates me that he's eating it, and I never met this guy. And again, I will probably never meet him, but thanks to the genius of the internet, I'm allowed to, I'm able to have this conversation back and forth with him. Same thing if you're an atheist. Find these people. I've got a gentleman, I think I did a conversation, or I mentioned him one time not too long ago, that's in India. Again, someone I probably never meet. But he and I exchange, comments back and forth. We text each other back and forth with different things. Perfectly lovely guy. But I will probably never meet him. But I met him on the internet through some atheist groups. And I now, I consider him an online friend. That's fine. So do that, Ralph. And again, if anybody else is listening, use that sort of thing. Use the resources you have at your disposal. We are out there. We're out there in greater numbers than people would like to believe and would like to think. And even if you are in a small town, there's other ones just like you there too. It's just hard to find. That's the problem. So I always say, go to the local, your nearest large city where people can be a little bit more comfortable, and you're going to find more of us out there. But there's, again, for the rest of it though, you're right. People will drop you. People will stop talking to you. And it's up to you how you want to deal with those people. Are they your friends? If they're willing to drop you over something like that, I would question that, right? I think you're right to put quotes around friends. If they are not willing to talk to you, they know that you're a good person. They know that you're warm and you're friendly and you're compassionate and you have empathy for people. And the only thing that separates you from what they knew yesterday is they now realize you don't believe in God, and that's enough for them to stop talking to you. Yeah, well, I would say they're probably not your friends. Can't really change family. They're still going to be your brother, still going to be your cousin, still going to be your uncle, whatever the case may be. But that doesn't mean you have to hang out with them. You're not obligated to do that. Not at all. And if that person is making your life harder or less fun, don't do it. You don't do it. Why? What's the point? You only got X amount of years on this planet. Why waste it stressing over people that apparently don't value you enough? So that is my 2 cents for Ralph, and I think I'm gonna wrap it up again for the day, because I gotta go and jump on. I gotta pack a little bit. I'm a terrible person. I wait to the last minute and pack, but I also pack very light. I'm taking a month vacation through Asia, multiple countries. I'm taking a single backpack. So for those of you that travel with like 27 bags, like you getting on the Titanic, no, take a backpack, something you can easily get in and out of planes, trains, and automobiles. And that's all you really need. You really don't need everything you thought you needed. And guaranteed, if you're in a country, chances are, I bet they got deodorant there. I bet they got toothpaste there. I bet they got underwear in that country as well. So if you forget something or you just don't want to bring it because it's too heavy and it starts to add up, leave half of it behind. If you're going all the way across the country like I am, I've spent, I don't even know. I don't even want to tell you. A few $1,000 easy on just plane tickets. If I have to buy $50 worth of clothes and toiletries when I get there, that's a drop in the bucket, right? You can compare to my plane tickets, right? Then I got hotels and I got food and this, that, the other. So if I have to buy some deodorant or I have to buy whatever, some socks, I can probably spring for the socks, right? So anyways, I'm getting on the plane here later on. So I'm going to try to get you another one out while I'm gone, but I may not do this every week. So, but look for the next one. You'll see it on there. And in the meantime, I hope you have a great rest of your Sunday. And also, don't forget to check us out at atheistville.com. That's our central hub where we have this show and the Unholy Roundtable and the blogs that we produce. You can find all that right there, and I'll link you out to the various places. And also, do us a favor, make sure you like the show and give us a good rating. It helps more people find us. And one final question and one final request: leave me a comment. Leave anybody, any of our guests, a comment. We love to answer those, and we will make sure we get to you as quickly as possible. We really do like engaging with you and hearing what you have to say, whether you agree with us or not. I always say that, whether you agree with us or not, that's fine. I will promise you that you will have a civil response from me. So again, have a great rest of your Sunday, and thank you very much. Take care.